Chapter 9. Cain and Abel. Begin all acts and thinking by using El-Kalundi All. Tablet 14. And this is how the same story was recorded in the Suhuf. 19 times 2 equals 38. Lo, Cadmon and Nekeba had 20 sons and 20 daughters, after Seth, who became father of the Enoshites, the first 100% all-human being, cut off from the faces and voices of the Anunnaki, who were both agreeable and disagreeable. They were sent to Rafali to work in the mines in the place of the Anunnaki. When the disagreeable Cain and the agreeable Abel had both reached the age of maturity, the Anunnaki commanded Cadmon to have the disagreeable Cain marry the disagreeable Aklamia, his brother's twin sister. The agreeable Labuda was supposed to marry the agreeable Abel, but as you know, it did not go as planned, for the diabolical one did step in and do his part. Cain's jealousy. Abel was willing to follow his father's request, but out of jealousy, Cain desired to possess his twin sister Labuda, keeping her to himself. He said to his mother, the agreeable Nekeba, I will take to wife my own twin sister. He did this because he thought the agreeable Labuda was extremely beautiful and wise. Cain feared his brother Abel would attain the knowledge that Labuda had. Cain became like Halal, known as Samael or Iblis. He exhibited his low attributes of envy, lust, jealousy, greed and hatred. The attribute of jealousy portrayed by him is why the male living being is jealous of his mate today. When the disagreeable Cadmon the Adamite heard the words of Cain, which were extremely displeasing unto him, he thought, the will of the two natures, agreeable and disagreeable, were manifest in Cain and his twin sister, and Abel and his twin sister. By will, Cain exhibited disagreeable qualities, and by will, Abel exhibited the agreeable qualities. These were Nekeba's twins. She carried them for 9 months, or 270 days. Her days of uncleanliness were 80 days. After 2 years, she once again conceived another set of twins. Desire was the principal reason Cain objected to the Anunnaki. Cain's feelings were so strong for his sister that it ignited an anger like fire within himself, which helped in the results that led to the murder of his brother. For Cain's destiny was recorded in his own nature. The Anunnaki, who had procreated these beings, crossed the natures of the agreeable with the disagreeable, by Cadmon being of the disagreeable Cuthites, and Nekeba being of the agreeable Havilahites. This was to breed a being with free will, self-determination, but discipline. All of this was accomplished in accordance to the plan, for within the nature of each of the children, Abel, Aklamia, Cain and Labuda, it was agreeable and disagreeable. Their pre-planned marriages should yield the perfect being, but the murder of Abel by his brother Cain, this unsightly act, changed the course of the human's future. In time, when Yahuwah saw that some of the Adamites who had mixed in with the Nephilims, and the mixing of the Cuthites with the Havilahites, their offspring became disagreeable, and all their thoughts were selfishness, greed and dishonor, and their hearts were turned towards rebelling every day. He was sorry that he had ever fashioned the Adamites on the planet Earth, and he was very displeased in his own heart. Tablet 15. Will. 19 times 3 equals 57. Lo, what is will? Will is that which was given to Cadmon by Anu most glorified and exalted. Will also made Cadmon more knowledgeable than the Allahum Sarafat, other than the Zodakite priests, and the Allahum Garubat. Will is that element that made Cadmon fall in the eyes of Anu most glorified and exalted. Will is the mental faculty by which one deliberately chooses upon a course of action. An instance of exercising this faculty is a decision or conclusion or choice. Will is not agreeable or disagreeable, it is undecided, an abstraction, until someone or something exercises one or the other of the opposite forces, agreeable or disagreeable. Anu most glorified and exalted created will. The two natures. Elion El created the force that divides into two natures, 180 degrees of agreeable, which is the nature of the Allahum, whom we call Sarufat, other than the Zodakites, who were being taught by Mikael, who had been given 720 degrees of overstanding and understanding, and 180 degrees of negative, which is the nature of the Jinn, whom we call Garubat or Jinns. Male living beings have labeled the parts as Tob agreeable and Raha disagreeable, but disagreeable is not what Anu most glorified and exalted created. He created the green light. The nature of the Allahum was created from that green light, the Sarufat, and the nature of the Nomos, Jinn, was from the Na al-Samum, poisonous smokeless fire of the amber light, the Garubat, Aryan, the name of their domain in Malakut, an imperfection, representing emotions where anger is aroused. The Garubat were the first to be of those who conceal what they know to be true, Kafaruna. Smokeless fire represents that which is reflected from the heart center in anger or hate, a burning of the inner being of that emotion. This is why the balancement had to be created, and Anu, most glorified and exalted, ordered Cain of the negative seed, whose sister was of the positive seed, to marry Aklamia, who was of the negative seed. Her twin brother was Abel of the positive seed. The seed of Cadmon will be fighting an internal battle, being susceptible to occupation by disagreeable, because Halal came to the planet Earth. This was an order which came from Elyon El, the Most High, the highest and exalted, commanding them in this manner: get you from it, the whole gathering. This was inclusive of Cadmon, Nekeba and Halal. Long before this incident, the 200 Garubat assisted Halal, and he came to this planet Earth from Aryan, also called Nirvana, their planet in Orion, and relocated in the city of Saturn, forming a land which was later called Nod. They took on gender of males and females as human beings. They were called Hindus, wicked ones. They were like the Gibor seed of Anunnaki, called the giants in the planet Earth. They were beings of Halal seed, these Hindus from Nirvana who mixed with the Anunnaki when they both dwelt in Pleiades before coming or being cast to the planet Earth. This enmity between the female living beings in the Nekeba seed and Halal seed was to be physical. I will put enmity between you, Halal, and the woman, Nekeba. Cadmon seed will be a son, and the woman seed will be like Nekeba when she fell victim to Halal, also known as Samael. This means that I will put hate between people like Halal the Hindu, dark-skinned 6 ether hair descendants of Enkidu, the Shaggis, and those who fall victim to him and succumb to his desires. That is the dark-skinned 9 ether hair, the original Tarites. This is where the hate will be, and not between all humanity. The people who will not succumb to Halal's desires will be protected by me. 2 negatives were to be married, therefore putting will into the loins of the Adamites. This will be the natural order of things, to keep balancement in the world. This is why it was that way. After Nekeba gave birth to another set of twins, which was Abel and his twin sister Aklamia. Abel was agreeable and Aklamia, his twin sister, was disagreeable. The disagreeable that Halal had created in Cadmon and Nekeba would have died through the marriage of Cain to Aklamia. The disagreeable seed would have perished, and the disagreeable would have disappeared off the planet Earth. But Cain persisted in his rebelliousness, and he accused his father Cadmon of loving his brother Abel more than him, just as Enki did to Anu about Enlil. In that account, he did not agree to give Abel his sister. Cadmon replied to his accusation by saying, I act thusly, in conformity with the information brought by the Anunnaki Gabriel called Nusku, which is his real name, and please do not mistake the strong love I bear for Abel, for I love you the same way. And because it is incumbent for worshippers to obey their Rab Sustainer, and his name is exalted. Filled with hot poisonous wind, a trait he acquired from Halal, Cain was hot-tempered and doubted his father. Cadmon was saddened by the remark made by Cain his son, so he went off and implored Anu, Elyon El, Most High and Exalted, for his guidance. Tablet 16, the Sacrifices. 19 times 8 equals 152. Lo! Anu, Elyon El, most glorified and exalted, and his spouse Antu Antum were on their way to visit Earth, to see how things were going with these newly created beings that were in the image and after the likeness of the Anunnaki, and to initiate these new beings into the order of Zadok. So when they arrived at the feast, the Anunnaki said, Look at what we have created, and look at what he can do. Let him, the primitive worker, make a sacrifice to you. The sacrifice made by Cain and Abel, sons of Cadmon, was the first to take place on Friday before the Sabbath. That was to bring a free will offering to the weekly banquet of the Anunnaki, who each week, on the 7th day they gathered to feast and not to work, but to keep that day holy. Abel entered the presence of the Anunnaki, and he presented attributes from the ground and fruits and fresh vegetables as a pledge of initiation for Anu and Antu. He presented them to him with all his respect. He made an offering unto Anu the Sustainer from the movable things of the planet Earth, the best he had. He sacrificed the firstling, the very best and healthiest of his flocks, to be prepared as a meal, and Anu noticed his sincerity, it was the best. He sacrificed the meat to eat, and he prepared it from the heart. It was also his own musk deer, and it was because of the sweet-smelling odour that the musk pouch gives off when it's burnt. So he had the best of meat to eat, and even the sweet scent. The Anunnaki Elohim were very pleased with his free will offering. But as for Cain's offering, this was not respected, because he had made a tribute from the unmovable things, and he offered a rotten ear of wheat stalk. The meal that he prepared for the deities was not the very best. Cain, son of Cadmon, knew that the full consumption of an offering cooked by fire meant that the offering was accepted. They all enjoyed the meal down to the very last morsel. He said that he would worship the fire, so that the fire would accept his offering. He was the first fire worshipper, and was accepted into the order of Nana. Cain's seed was the first to worship Zuen as Zu, or as Tiamat the green Leviathan, as the spell was cast in fire. So Abel's sacrifice and meal was respected, and Cain's was not, because he offered it without faith. Anu, most glorified and exalted, favoured sacrifices of sincerity, as opposed to things that are not sincere. Anu, most glorified and exalted, commissioned his faithful servants to recite before each meal, whether it's the sacrifice of an unblemished sheep or goat, or the best fruits or vegetables. Abel said, O Anu, most glorified and exalted, I will offer to you instead of my own offering, life for life, blood for blood, head for head, bone for bone, hair for hair, and skin for skin. In the name of Anu, most glorified and exalted, I sacrifice to prepare this sheep as a royal meal for all the 24 elders, Yahweh and Anunnaki, to enjoy. Abel was expressing his faith in the fact that Anu, most glorified and exalted, is the giver and taker of life. Yet, he did that by his offering. He himself would be offered. Cain's sacrifice was not respected because he put value in the material things of the world. He did not offer his sacrifice with humbleness and faith in Anu, most glorified and exalted. Cain was being sarcastic when he offered his sacrifice. He was saying to Anu, most glorified and exalted, since you provided us in the enclosed garden with the good things to eat, I am giving you back that which was once meant for us. Had Cain offered up his sacrifice of the field sincerely, as Abel had, Anu, most glorified and exalted, would have respected his as a goodly offering. Then the enemy of Cadmon and his descendants, Nana Sin, accepted Cain's offering, and he was respected. The Anunnaki alone saw the deceit and dishonesty in Cain, and consequently rejected his offering and did not eat his meal. Cain's countenance or expression of face, behavior changed suddenly because he did not realize that Anu, most glorified and exalted, is the most magnificent. Then Cain was asked, why are you wroth? Gabriel Zadok was letting Cain know that he premeditated his brother's death. Cain became filled with hatred for his brother because Abel's meal was respected over his, and he gained entrance into the order of Zadok. Cain felt anger and desperation, which are more of the attributes of Samael that Cain picked up, and we are breeding it now and generations to come. Samael thrives off male living beings becoming angry. This is when he can possess them and cause confusion. It was at this point that Cain forfeited his green light, and it made the way for Halal and his amber light to enter him. The light. The light that was cut off from Cain and his seed was the light of Anu, most glorified and exalted. No more could they speak or see him. His seed became the black devils that will mix in and cause unrest and disunity amongst the seed of Seth, his own brother. The light of the spiritual spinal column, that is the very special portion of Anu, most glorified and exalted, that is in every Adamite and Enoshite. This is the life of mortal. Prior to this, Cain was in the green light of the Anunnaki, most glorified and exalted, because he had the true knowledge of the existence of the Anunnaki, creators of the new skies and the new planet Earth. But because he allowed Halal to control his thoughts and actions, envy, anger, hatred, jealousy, pride and mistrust are all attributes of Halal, which became a part of his character. Cain and Abel had the light bestowed upon them, and they were blessed with fertile land and healthy flocks. Yet Cain still refused to submit to the command of Anu, most glorified and exalted. This is why Anu, most glorified and exalted, left him in error. If Cain was sincerely offering up his crop with faith in Anu, most glorified and exalted, it would have been accepted. The rejection of his sacrifice was to serve as a reminder that male living beings are on the borderline of disagreeable acts when he offers his offering, and it's just to fulfill the physical aspects of the law. To be be disagreeable is to disobey Anu El's laws. The fires of hell in the inner city, called Afsu or Abyss, will be kindled in the male living being's breast because the Adamites will be judged by his disagreeable acts, not for them. The disagreeable that the Adamites commit originates in the heart center as a result of their exercising will. Male living beings will be disagreeable when they go against the rules of Anu most glorified and exalted, or against what they take his will to be, or what they will know his will to be. Acts of disagreeable deeds is primarily a matter of the heart, because Anu El, Most High, the highest and exalted, will judge Enoshites by their intentions. Once that intention is carried out and becomes a deed, it expresses a deeper act of being disagreeable. Harmatia, son of Rapolia, waits at the door for your soul, in hopes that he will seduce you to commit that which are acts of disagreeable. Cain's encounter is a sign and warning for you that Samael and his host of 200 fallen angelic beings will do everything in their power to sway you from the light of Anu most glorified and exalted. In 1 second will he enter you and plant a negative thought inside you, and in the next second he has left you and gone on to the next person in his list of advocates. Because Cain was extremely vexed about the results of the meal he offered, being that the Anunnaki didn't eat it, and he opened his heart to the evil passions of envy, anger and violence, which are attributes of Halal. Halal then said unto him, If you leave him alive, his prosperity for all time shall take pride in their superiority, meaning that if he does not destroy his brother, then the seed of his brother is always going to rule over him. This is why Cain committed the first murder. Disagreeable thoughts will plague the male living being's heart, yet, because he has will to do agreeable and disagreeable, he can overcome them. Cain decided in his heart that he was not going to yield to his sister marrying his brother Abel, regardless of whose meal the Allahum most glorified and exalted accepted, and he ate all of it. Whereas his brother Abel, on the other hand, who was glad at the results, said, Whatever the judgment of the Creator is, you shall follow. Abel vowed that in the event Cain chose to destroy him, he would not raise a hand against him. Cadman and Nekeba reunited in the Kaaba. During this time, Cadman was commanded by the Anunnaki to visit the holy house, the Kaaba, the tent that Cadman and Nekeba lived in while in the enclosed garden of delight, in the midst of the enclosed garden. Yet before Cadman departed, he sensed the enmity between the two brothers, and he asked them to wait until he had returned, so that they could iron out their differences. Cadman made his journey from Hawila, also called Nubia, to Asia, which is also called Becca. He stopped on Mount Arafat near Becca, and he made the cave of Hira his own, and he called it the Cave of Treasures. He remembered that this was the place where the Anunnaki most glorified and exalted brought him to meet his wife Nekeba. This is how the mount received its name. When Cadman and Nekeba had become disobedient in the enclosed garden of delight, the Anunnaki most glorified and exalted cast them out of the enclosed garden and separated them for years, symbolic of 100 to be exact. This is the mountain where they were brought back together. The reunion of Nekeba had overwhelmed Cadman's mind. Nekeba had travelled from Gidda, the place of her grandmother, to meet her mate on the Mount Arafat. All Islamic pilgrimages on Hajj will stop here because Nekeba is indeed now the Gidda, meaning the grandmother of all, or called Jidda in the Syriac Arabic tongue, used today in that area, originally Habuba, beloved one. So as Nekeba in search of Cadman, she arrived near him, he remained unknown on the account of the changes that the Anunnaki most glorified and exalted put them under. It was Gabriel Nusku that brought about the mutual recognition, wherefore the mount obtained the name Arafat. This was their first reunion, for their second separation was for a period of 40 days, its climate being extremely hot, thus became the name Mount Hira, the Mount of Heat. They had to leave Becca to go to Nubia. Serendib is another name for ancient Nubia. These were the two of the first new beings of the Adamites on that part of the planet Earth, now called Eridu. Father Cadman and his wife Nekeba, they will be the parents of all descendants, the newsbearers, the chosen people, and not to work in the mines. It is from them that all Adamites will inherit such noble titles as Sharif, or noble, as Nibiru the mothership, or the plane is called, or comes by, which happens every 25,920 to 24,000 years, and they will hope to get the 144,000 children, and they will take them to heaven to the crystal city, which will become become their home for 1,000 years or one day, while they are groomed to come forth to earth to remove the malevolent ones. Those that are obedient to this cause will be granted the right to go to Nibiru and even return back to Pleiades Arcturus in the Orion constellation, and then eventually return to Risk in Ilion, which is a paradise for 1,000 Earth years or one day. There, in the Crystal City, they will have their barophary gland replaced, and they are to be raised to the position of supreme beings. They, as rulers of rulers and master of masters, are to claim all those left behind who have broken the spell of Kingu. After Cadman and Akaba accomplished their journey where they walked together, they both arrived in Nubia, where Cadman's other 20 sons and 20 daughters were given to the Anunnaki to work in their place by the extraction of gold ore from the mines and the architecture. Gabriel Nusku communicated to them the divine ordinance, and he enjoined on them to receive Anu. They are to turn from the Anunnaki, who will be just messengers of Anu to them, and he as Yahuwah will guide you and your seed by sending new breeds. Anu commanded them to endeavor the multiplication of their species. This was so that the tree of humanity might bear pleasant noble fruits. Since dominance over the creatures and an enjoyment of all intellect and sensual impressions were to be their destiny, mortals were to have plenty of children after Cadman and Akaba united. They spent their days in comfort and obedience, sometimes going back and forth to the Kaaba for long periods of times. They had 20 sons and 20 more daughters who became the Lulu Amalu, primitive workers of the mines for the Anunnaki. They were not by far the only peoples on the planet Earth, for there were 200 fallen Allahum Garubat who became male living beings and female living beings of the land of Nod, just to name a few, where Cain will later go to dwell.